The Dream by Hannah Timmons. There once was a young hairless cat named Dolores. He was a house cat and rarely left the comfort of his bed. Today, though, he decided to tag along with his human on a little outing. They decided to go out to wander around for a little while and ended up stopping at a little shop. Dolores had been just looking around when he realized he was dragging around a loose leash. He turned around to find his owner panicking. He ran in circles trying to find her, but it didn't matter. She was gone. Dolores was scared and alone somewhere he'd never been, and he just wanted to go home. He wove in and out of crowds of people, starting to freak out a little. He was exhausted from running around searching, and he stumbled backwards, falling right down a sewer hole. "Ow!" Dolores groaned, getting up and turning his head to the side. He stood up and dusted himself off, glancing around. "What the?" he yelped after seeing a giant rat standing next to him. "How'd you get down here?" the rat asked. "I fell," Dolores stuttered. "Well, that wasn't very smart, was it?" the rat laughed. Dolores frowned. "Just tell me how to get out of here," he said to the rat. "Right this way," the rat cackled, waving towards a doorway across the room. So Dolores turned on his heels and walked down the tunnel and hopefully towards home. He had been walking for a little while when his mind started to wander back to that shop. He started to think, where was my human? Does she hate me? Was she even looking for me? He stumbled off to the side of the tunnel and sat on the floor. Does she even want me to come home? He whispered to himself, beginning to cry. Why would she ever want me anyways? I'm the worst, he said pitifully, letting himself drift off into his thought. He thought back to when his human first picked him out and brought him home. She'd been walking aimlessly through the pet store, about to give up, when she looked up and saw him. He was curled up at the back wall of his kennel. All of his siblings were at the front, getting attention from a couple of little kids. But his human walked up to the kennel and she didn't choose one of his siblings that everyone was doting over. She looked right at him and chose him. Dolores jolted out of his trance and looked around, before making a decision and getting up to leave. As he turned to go, he promised himself he would never waste time pitying himself again. Once he finally made it above ground, Dolores began walking around, lost as ever, wondering if his human missed him as much as he missed her. When all of a sudden he realized he'd seen this part before. His owner had taken him here once or twice to get him out of the house. He turned in the direction he now knew he was supposed to go, when all of a sudden, in the corner of his eye, he saw a flash of color in the trees above him. He looked up and saw what must have been 30 birds moving around, dancing in beautiful patterns and singing lovely songs. "Wow," he muttered, sitting down to keep watching. The birds were so beautiful. After hours of sitting there in a trance, he shook his head and looked around. "Oh no," he wailed. "Why did I stay so long? Now it's dark." He stood up and began to run towards where he knew his owner would be waiting for him. He reached the house, ran up the porch, was about to run into the house when all of a sudden he jolted awake. He groggily opened his eyes and looked around. He was in his house, in his bed, sleeping right next to his human. It was all a dream, he thought to himself before snuggling closer to his human. "I guess I learned quite a lot, though," was his last thought before drifting back into peaceful sleep.